Great. Hi, everyone. So, welcome to our panel on AI and crypto. Really excited about this one. Earlier this year, I would say around March, it seems like the world really reached a tipping point where fiction is now reality with the popularization of LLMs like ChatGPT. Really, only a few other comparable technological tipping points, in my opinion, maybe splitting of the atom, flight, internal combustion engine, printing press, maybe crypto, Bitcoin, I guess. And yeah, now we can see a world where AI seems like it could be omnipresent, maybe even omnipotent. And for me, this is both exciting and a little bit scary, but I'm a hopeful romantic and optimistic that humans won't mess this up. So, without further ado, really excited for this panel. We have some great speakers, Shradhaa and Keshav from SwapGPT, AI tools for trading, Brent from Alethea AI, character development tool, and Anish should hopefully be joining us as well from Panther, putting privacy applications into market. So yeah, without further ado, let's kick it off to our panelists, and please share with us some intros about the work that you're doing and how it's being applied to AI. So I'll just go around and pass it over to Kashat.
Hi everyone. Thanks so much for having us over here. So the main thing where we believe that AI is coming to the picture, and especially that's something that what we are also building on is around predictions, enabling and using it for trading use cases, such as identifying the right set of models which can predict the prices better, where we can expect based on real-time analysis that prices would increase or decrease, and then accordingly have the strategies take the call on how to execute those transactions. In short, that's one part of in the traditional world, or in the like DeFi side right now, which is being executed by smart contracts. We call it in the form of liquidity manager. We believe that can be powered to a great extent when we have AI models built around it to train them accordingly for making the predictions. And that is something that we are developing at SwapGPT as well, an AI powered liquidity manager, and as well as a DeFi aggregator, which can predict routes using the AI algorithms that we are building in house.
Awesome. Yeah, that seems like a really amazing tool. I'm sure AI will be able to inform these decision makings better than humans. Yeah, Sharad, any more to add, and maybe a brief intro about yourself?
Yeah. Hey everyone, this is Shraddha. I'm the CTO and CPO of SwapGPT. So adding on to just what Keshav mentioned, so we have SwapGPT in the name of we have GPT in the name of SwapGPT protocol, which means that we are leveraging artificial intelligence. So we are building our own AI models to forecast the best paths for trade execution and liquidity management. Our roadmap also includes support for natural language prompts, which will let customers control their liquidity and execute trades by utilizing simple language, so that they can harness the power of LLMs and generative AI. So I think that will make the lives of DeFi users pretty simple because they don't have to know a lot about coding or technical indicators to be able to manage their capital.
Awesome. Yeah, excited to dive into this use case a little bit more as we look at the intersection of crypto and AI and how those, yeah, work together. Um, yeah, passing it over to the Metaverse account.
Hey, I'm Brent. I am the VP of Community at Alethea AI. Thank you so much for having me here, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak a little bit about Alethea AI and what we're doing. So, Alethea AI is a research and development studio, and we are actively building at the intersection of AI and blockchain. So our mission is to use these technologies to enable decentralized ownership and democratic governance of artificial intelligence. We've been around since about 2019. Um, and yeah, we've launched a couple products, one of which I've noticed you guys tested out, which was CharacterGPT, which is a text-to-character engine. And I know I'll have the opportunity to speak a little bit more about that later. But thanks for having me here, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely early adopters of some of these, and even for content production, marketing, what this is. I think AI is a great tool. I'm just hoping that my job as host here of these Twitter Spaces won't be soon replaced by LLM. But even then, it might still be fun to watch. But yeah, without yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say, hopefully, if anything, it just makes your job a lot easier, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'll just input my ideas and then it'll do the rest. Um, but great. Yeah. So at a high level, I think it'll be good to uh, set some common definitions. So curious to hear from everyone. How would you define AI? Um, yeah, just keeping it broad. Go. We can go in reverse order. So Brett, go ahead.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I was just sitting here thinking how to define artificial intelligence. I don't know that I'm even going to attempt to answer that question directly as far as defining it, but I do see a ton of use cases for it, right? Like, um, there's just so many avenues that that AI can be helpful, right? So, for instance, having digital companions is one thing that's taking off, but also, as Keshav is mentioning, there's opportunities to leverage AI to make smart decisions and mathematical decisions for you. Well, at Alethea AI, we're definitely leaning into right now and into character creation and ownership. So we see artificial intelligence inherently as an abundance engine. So you can use Midjourney, you can use ChatGPT to create ideas, to create businesses. And there's anybody, you can create as many of these a day as many times as any user at this point right now is prompting the AI to create those things. So where we see Web3 coming in is Web3 is it provides, it's a scarcity engine, right? So on blockchain you can prove ownership, you can transact on blockchain. So we see that the intersection of those two things as being tremendously valuable for anyone using AI into the future.
Yeah, definitely, and would love to dive deeper into those. One framework that I think about AI and crypto is AI is almost like a naturally centralizing force. We see these very large companies aggregating data, aggregating models, and crypto is the complete opposite. Decentralizing data, potentially, as you were mentioning, tools for decentralizing models and access to these. So yeah, excited to dive into those. Keshav, Shradhaa, any thoughts on how to define AI from your personal point of view?
Yeah, maybe I would define AI as probably simulation of the way humans think through data sets and models. So even at SwapGPT, we are building our own proprietary AI models to basically factor in the way humans think about trading. Um, to add, I think there are a variety of use cases even within the DeFi trading space as well. But if I have to define AI in layman terms, that's how I would do. It's basically you just are simulating human brain through machine and going over large data sets to figure out the predictive patterns and then also validate your models.
Yeah, that's a really good frame of reference. Especially with neural networks, I think there's definitely a lot of analogs between, how we look at machine learning models or AI and yeah, humans. So very interesting there. I guess I'll also give my frame of view or my point of thought. So I think maybe AI generally can just be decision making with software, and applied very broadly, AI can be kind of dumb, stupid, simple, maybe like a smart contract that does the same thing every time, just inputs and outputs, and then it can be ultra mega complex like an LLM or as you were saying, Shara, like something that converges to human intelligence or how humans make decisions. So with that broad spectrum, I think AI definitely has a very very broad set of applications, and yeah, would love to dive deeper into some of those. Um, so yeah, um, maybe okay. So let's hop first into a fun question. So with this frame of reference in mind, do we think that maybe AI could be sentient in the future, or go beyond where we see now to a point where it's better at processing information than humans. And then we can dial it back.
Yeah, so probably, in my opinion, what I'm thinking is this: there are good enough capabilities for the AI models. What one needs to be very careful about is that the model is as good as the data it is being trained on. It's the simple logic that the models can have false hallucination. If there's wrong data going through it, then the output also that will come out would be wrong, and then the results of the entire actions after that also would be improper. So that is one caution we need to take care of, that while training those models or wherever you're working with AI data sets, working with LLMs, we need to ensure that data is vetted first before even feeding into the systems. And then probably that can help us to a great extent in taking some bit of computations away from what humans are doing right now, analyzing vast data sets, and also be sure of the accuracy of the results. There should not be any false hallucination. If that's avoided, that is something that's taken care of from day one, then definitely I do have a strong belief that AI would be better in terms of decision making compared to what human or system does right now without those components.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. I personally think that even if it's not quote unquote sentient, conscious, it'll probably approach something that's indistinguishable, and then at that point, what's the difference? And to your point, we just need to make sure that the frameworks or safeguards we put in place make sure that the data is correctly analyzed, and yeah, things like hallucinations are minimized. Although I would argue that humans also hallucinate, quite frequently. Yeah, any other thoughts on the capabilities of AI and where maybe in 50, 100 years or maybe even sooner, we'll see it come?
Yeah, I can jump in. I don't, to your point, AI being fully conscious, right, is we have to define what conscious actually is at that point, right? And if we is that ones and zeros, you can make the case either way. But I do believe as AI scales and gets smarter, and as Keshav's mentioned, the data that is input into the LLMs is going to make a tremendous, it's going to basically lead the AI to how it will think. But I do believe we'll get to a point where it's right now prompting is everything, where we are actively asking ChatGPT to give us data back. But there should be a point where the artificial intelligence knows what you're almost what you're thinking. Is maybe even seeing what you're spending money on via credit card data, and is able to give you insights and answer questions that you may not have even asked yet, or even suggest things that you may need to purchase if you that will supplement what you've purchased. So I think that AI will at some point be able to be ahead of you, and as opposed to actively having to prompt.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good framework. It's almost like an extension of our brains, not thinking of it as a replacement or, something else, just an extension of us. Yeah, that's a really good framework. I wonder how, the ethics and morals and maybe even laws will apply in the future. Like, I saw recently on Reddit on the ChatGPT subreddit that ChatGPT is better when you're nice to it. If you say please, thank you, if you frame things nicely, you'll get way better answers. And of course, the logic there isn't that it's sentient and it's being nice, but that just in general, it's trying to take what you give it and expand upon it with guessing what the next word should be. And if you're nice to it, then it'll give you a nice answer, I guess, for lack of a better explanation. It's just trying to imitate or copy what you're saying. So, even like with these frameworks, it's interesting to think about them. Um, yeah. So from this consideration of AI being potentially, very powerful part of our lives, how do we think about centralization and decentralization? Um, so going back to the idea of crypto being a decentralizing force and potentially AI being a centralizing force, all this data being aggregated by large companies like Google, OpenAI, Meta, etc. how can crypto kind of counterbalance that? And I think we've kind of hinted at some of these earlier. So yeah, would love to hear your thoughts on how crypto can counterbalance the centralization of AI.
Yeah, I can jump in over here probably. So, see, what I think at this stage, given there's still a lot of improvement that needs to happen, it's right now very different concepts that we can merge together. Bringing all of the AI elements on chain is still something that would take a lot of time, but how it can help in the decision making is the computation part, the logics part, can all be done in an off-chain manner using the AI models, and that is something once the computation is done then can be fed to the systems to execute the transactions and have everything on chain. But so far if you think about it, then yes, to your point, like you mentioned, AI is very centralized and blockchain is fully decentralized. The only way to work around it would be to have this kind of combination wherein the computation and the logics is done off chain and then data is fed on chain for the blockchain to consume that. Probably once we see more and more chains developing wherein the transaction speed increases, there's high throughput, the speed increases to a great extent, that is when probably we can see at an amalgamation wherein we can move some of these models on chain as well. But so far technology needs to be developed to that stage wherein we can do this very confidently, otherwise we'll see more and more transaction time just increasing for every transaction that is carried on chain. So it definitely has some potential, but may take some amount of time.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe the capabilities of crypto, or at least Ethereum as it stands, can't, maintain those, but maybe higher throughput, higher bandwidth chains like Aptos, Solana potentially could have, these capabilities. Yeah, any other thoughts on this? How crypto can be a decentralizing force for the centralizing of AI?
From our standpoint at Alethea, I think one way to look at it is, and I mentioned this earlier, is just the ownership, right? So, like, let's say I create 100 images on Midjourney. Those exist, right click save. There's lawsuits right now that are going through the U.S. Of can you actually copyright, or can you own this IP that the AI creates? And currently, as the law states, you're not able to, right? So whenever there needs to be some human element, mind you. Sorry, I need to make sure that's important. It's not just the AI creating, but if a human's working with the AI in partnership, and new things are created, you can obviously have the IP on that and expand on it. But what blockchain does is it gives you that proof of ownership, right? So if I have an image and I create an NFT of it, and I use it as a logo for my brand, and I have ownership of that, and I ended up wanting to pass the brand on at a later date, I'm able to do that, and all of that is verifiable on blockchain. So I think speaking about it in that manner makes a lot of sense, and makes it kind of easy to digest.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of the improvements for proving systems, maybe you're alluding to this, seem to also be applicable to blockchain. Like, for example, the ZK technology now being put into market for layer twos on Ethereum to prove that computation was done off chain, on the L1, so that most of that, intensive compute can happen somewhere else. And then all you need to do is prove that it happened. That seems like a really good application for AI and crypto, right? Can we take something that happened off chain, let's say, computing of these models, or potentially ownership, and then put that on chain, so that it can be verified and trusted. So yeah, I think that's a great application. I see also we have Anish joining. Um, and thank you for joining, Anish. And yeah, we're talking about how crypto can be a decentralizing force for the inherent centralization of AI, and the proving systems like ZK to prove that compute or models are accurate off chain, and something like Ethereum seems like a great application of this technology. So I know you've worked a little bit in the space, and yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Well, I've worked on a bunch of things in that sense. In one edge, I worked on the privacy pursuing machine learning, and the other bit that I worked on is explainability. So, in my mind, most of the ZK things are very useful for explainability. Meaning, like you can also have other techniques to apply, like where to send your compute over to data, and you don't have the place, or you don't own the place where the data resides. You might want to use something like MPCs or ZKPs to do that. But in general, one of the problems we have had in the past few years is one, the computational effort that's actually required to do any of this has been quite high. And second is the speed that normally is a key criteria, right, has been quite low. So because of all of that, the adoption has been low. And so also was the availability of libraries, easily usable libraries. So to me, in my mind, given all these things have changed, I expect quite a bit of adoption of ZK for explainability purposes, a whole bunch of MPCs for sending MPC FHE to sending models over to data, and probably a lot of things that we never knew existed. Like, for example, data engineering pipeline, right? You could actually provide a kind of a ZK proof saying, this is the engineering pipeline and this is the proof. And similarly, provenance of data, you could just do the same. And similarly, provenance of data models, you could do the same. So I don't know, there seems to be lots and lots of opportunities. It's up to the economic drivers in the market to help these really enable uh, being used in the market in that sense. It's like, which are the use cases for which doing any of this really makes sense on a chain.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Where is the demand and are the incentives there for people to adopt these more decentralized architectures for AI? Right now it seems like the big companies, OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, etc., they're able to coordinate, way more easily with each other because they're just one entity, and create these very large data centers, compute this data very efficiently. And yeah, maybe we aren't there yet in terms of kind of decentralizing this ability to compute and do models, off chain and independently, and then kind of bring them back together. But yeah, I wonder what the maybe tipping point for demand might be. Like, what would drive people to use, for example, a decentralized LLM, for lack of an example, of a better example, right? Something that's been maybe processed more decentralized and then an OpenAI versus a chat GPT. Yeah, kind of curious to hear.
Yeah, my take is the following. This is like a most important thing that anybody who tries to do a model that exists and has shown success in a centralized model is being replaced by a model that's decentralized. In very simplest of terms, if you were to compare like a very simple leader election model as a consensus, the work effort required is the normal effort required to do whatever you do, plus the work effort to do decentralized version, right? Which is like the leader election protocol in that sense, right? And now, if you're thinking about machine learning models, if you're using something like MPC, FHE, or ZK, all of them are more expensive. So we need to really find this model where the fact that we can provide privacy or we can provide confidentiality for the model or the data or provide provenance in a private manner has real economic value in a market, and this value is higher than the cost of decentralization, the cost of running ZK, MPC, FHE. That is the thing I think that will be the key.
Yeah, definitely. It's finding kind of like the value and making sure that that is more than the added value of doing, as you were saying, or the added cost of doing this in a more decentralized way. Keshav, Shradhaa, Brett, any thoughts on this?
So I like this point that Anish mentioned that once those models are further trained and proved on the centralized space, and then you kind of move it to the decentralized world as well. That is when you can still have more of a data and be able to replicate probably the success of that to a good extent. So Probably that's one way to go about it, and definitely there could be a good scope in terms of testing it using ZKs as well, and to see if there are more synergies over there. But this is kind of one thing that we are also leaning towards in terms of our model training whenever we are doing it in house, that we try to see if we are getting successes in terms of the results on the centralized space first. The sole reason because that's way faster, the training can be done in a very much smoother manner, and we can have access to large sets of data in an easier manner. So we have seen some bit of results, but again, it's a long way to go, and before we can confidently conclude that yeah, it's working 100% fine and in a risk adjusted manner. So yeah, this is something that we'll have to watch out as and when the space evolves further.
Yeah, maybe just to add to what Keshav mentioned, the kind of data that we have on the centralized space versus decentralized is quite different. The data is very structured and clean when it comes to centralized space. But when you talk about DeFi, extracting the data itself is a huge task, and then you have to structure it or basically organize it and clean it. So the delta of moving the AI models from centralized to decentralized is quite large. So yeah, that's definitely one of the concerns when you try to move something from centralized to decentralized.
Yeah, any thoughts there, Brett?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking that work is incredibly important, right? Like right now, another part that's can't be decentralized at this point is the compute, right? So the compute cost, that AWS or Microsoft are taking, those types of things. There's so much compute that's happening. It would absolutely, no one could afford it. So the work of bringing the models and making them decentralized, having DAOs around them is incredibly important, and as well as hopefully seeing this compute at some point being decentralized will be incredibly powerful. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the space evolves.
Is it okay if I add something to that?
Yeah, go for it. Open mic for everyone. Go for it.
Yeah, so the thing I was about to say was like there are a couple of initiatives to move, compute to data. I think there's one in IPFS, but Baraclau or something like that. Codfish in Portuguese. Don't ask me what it is. And there are a couple of other ones as well. The question is not that of actually having, the cost of compute and the amount of resources available. Is more essentially, to me at least, in the way I've been thinking, is the fact that where the storage really happens, and mostly the storage happens across a network. And even though both computation, which is the thing that thing that's been driving down the cost of doing machine learning, right, Moore's law in that sense, has been happening, and it has been going almost in an exponential curve. Not really truly exponential for the last few years, but it's still in that curve, right? But network hasn't been increasing in that manner. It has been more or less in a linear manner, right? So what we have now is you have data stuck at the end of a constrained resource, which is a network, which only works or expands in a linear manner. And even though the compute on the other side is probably very, very able to do things. And so far, the kind of models we've got, like say for example, if you look at federated model or split learning, to a degree it works. But again, there's an arbitrage between a centralized machine learning model and a decentralized machine learning model. When I call federated learning model and split learning as a decentralized machine learning model, it is not truly a decentralized in that sense, but that's the nearest to what you can easily think of. And the thing is, if you could look at it, you will always see the federated learning model or split learning model will always have a lesser learning, or something like the accuracy will be lesser than that. And the arbitrage in the open market is this, highest of the two will win, right? So if you were to look at search engines like, why Google has won, because of the page ranking. The page ranking was far better than everybody else. So the pricing mechanism doesn't really take into consideration other factors like compliance, privacy, and things like that. If and only if that is taken into consideration, I think there will be a real valid economic incentive for people to do this. This is my thesis. Okay, I shall keep my mouth shut now.
No, definitely, keep it coming. These are the conversations we need to have, and these are super, super interesting. Kind of pulling on some of these threads that were touched on. It seems to me what I'm understanding is the capabilities to do decentralized either aren't there yet to do it as efficiently as centralized, or as Anish is saying, there's potentially an arbitrage in the capability. So maybe the AI will be a little bit dumber, I guess, for lack of a better term, than the one that's centralized, or maybe more expensive. Just my thoughts here is maybe this will sort out into different consumer demand categories. So just like there's fast food, which is efficient in calories but maybe not healthy for our bodies. Similarly, there might be AI models which are kind of like junk food in a way, where they're very fast, efficient, but then it's a very centralized. It's aggregating a ton of your personal data, which is not good for your privacy health, for example. Whereas something that's decentralized is maybe kind of, again, to the analogy of food, is organic, maybe it isn't as big, or it's not as calorie dense as, the other one. And then it's also way more expensive, right? So then the consumers that can pay for their privacy, or can pay for, models that are more decentralized, will do so. And, I think consumers are kind of waking up to this reality, right? Like I definitely don't feel comfortable with Google and all these large companies having insight into all my emails and all my personal information, and now that they can easily pass it through these models and extrapolate more insights and analysis about me just to push me ads, seems a little bit dystopian. So I wonder if consumer choices might shift towards healthier data consumption, and that could be kind of like the demand or tipping point for these decentralized models to really take off. But yeah, kind of curious how people think about the consumer demand for a more decentralized AI versus a centralized one.
I can jump in, and I'm certainly not going to be as technical as Anish or Keshav, but one way to think about this from my standpoint, is like, okay, what's happening with TikTok? Why is why are creators going to TikTok? Why is X now paying people to tweet and paying people to give their attention to Twitter, right? The reason people are waking up, because if I'm a content creator and I'm gathering a mass following, and I'm creating things that are driving website traffic to one of these sites or applications, who's making the money off of that? And it's the centralized company for the work and effort that I'm coming in. Obviously, there are opportunities that I may explore with like collaborations with different brands and getting paid in that manner. But what we're seeing are these creators, leaving Instagram, since they've dropped their creator fund, and going to TikTok because they are able to monetize their creations. And so to bring that back, with ChatGPT, anyone using it right now is training their model for them. So ChatGPT is getting smarter each day, be off of the labor of the masses that are utilizing it. And so with a decentralized model or an owned model by a certain consumer, you're able to keep that data yourself, and then potentially, if blockchain's involved, potentially lease that out, right? So you would be in charge of, if this model has a lot of data on your day to day, and you would like to monetize that, and I could see in the future brands being interested in potentially paying you for all of this information so that they can target advertising towards you. I see that playing out, and that's a really good use case for a decentralized model that you own, and that you're in charge of essentially monetizing yourself and making that money yourself, rather than doing all of the work for a model that a centralized company's leveraging to make money.
Is it okay if I have a slightly contrarian view on this? And I will explain why I have this. So I was involved initially with Swamp. So I was one of the early team members of Swamp. Ethereum Swarm, the fast distributed file storage. I was also involved in the early design of Ocean Protocol. So I've done both what you describe as a decentralized storage of data, and I've always also been involved in creation of a marketplace for price discovery. So having looked at both the problems very carefully and having looked at where things are, I think we have to go a long way before we could actually find the price point where you could actually have a few things at the same time. Number one is finding the price discovery. So, gosh, sorry. The thing is, like, you need to find the price really fast, which is like, when I say really fast, it's like fast enough for people doesn't recognize, somebody's doing price discovery. And secondly, the cost of doing price discovery should be low enough that your, overall margin still exists. And then there's this question about storage, right? When you storage is, in most instances, decentralized storage is more expensive than centralized storage. The simplest reason for this is, like, one was the reason that I described before. Whenever you do anything decentralized versus centralized, in addition to doing centralized, you have this extra work of doing at least data election protocol, right? But if you're thinking about decentralized storage, you, in all likelihood, will have to store multiple copies, because there's a concept of churn, as in, like, different users join and leave. When people join and leave, you need to have, at any point in time, enough of data to do something. So you have to multiply the original data to store. So the total cost of storage increases. So what I'm kind of saying is, like, because of all these reasons, unless we find a unique use case where it is, like, super important for us to store the data in a very decentralized manner, B, we have changed the inexpensive enough so that we can actually do price discovery and fast enough so that we can actually do the price discovery fast enough so nobody has to wait for the data to be price to be discovered and then go and do the compute. Until then, I think this is going to be a slight challenge.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point, and definitely on Ethereum, very expensive and slow to compute. So I would be hard pressed to see it happen there, but potentially some of these newer blockchains could support a use case like this. And um, I think it's good to think about these and move towards them and try these out. And would definitely love to see more of these attempts at these marketplaces for data using AI. I think recently there was a company that I think Jensen is the name of the company that might be doing decentralized compute. They had a big round led by A16Z. So I think this might be incorrect, but anyway, I think these attempts definitely need to keep happening, and maybe as you're saying, these challenges of price and um, yeah, price and efficiency, can hopefully be fixed over time.
Yeah, I mean, there is quite a bit of money being spent on all this. When you mentioned A16Z, there were other people, the cryptographic primitives that kind of required. There has been a significant investment over the years. Shafi Goldwasser, she has a startup called Duality. I believe there is a chunk of money. There are a couple of other FHE companies. Pharma is one of them. They all have raised a good chunk of money. So, and we have to give them credit, and there's been a significant progress in all of these things. But I am not sure we have reached the point where the switch between centralized and decentralized would appear seamless. That's the criteria I have in my mind. So it's like, if you were on a phone, like, whether you are on a data packet network or a normal network in that sense, as long as you don't see the difference, you really don't care how it's actually happening. The same way, when you communicate, like, essentially when you're talking to somebody, the quality of your conversation doesn't change however the data is being transmitted, whether in analog or digital, right? The same way, whether we are going to have compute either centralized or decentralized, as long as we have the users have the same experience and the cost is more or less in the same ballpark area, And if they have like this extra thing, so it's like generally when I talk about privacy, I describe it in a manner that normally really goes to McDonald's to actually get a smoothie. But if you go there for a burger, you might get a smoothie. So, that's how I kind of think about it, because like I haven't seen anything being driven just by privacy. If privacy were a thesis, and this is like a very strong thesis, then Facebook wouldn't exist, Google wouldn't exist. You know what I'm saying, right? So I'm still open to it. I think there's a lot of progress that's happening, and I'm hopeful that in the next couple of years we will have solutions which will be very close to decentralized and possibly decentralized.
Definitely, that's a really good point, and also very applicable to crypto, right? I feel like until we get to the point where sending a transaction or doing an exchange is fast and cheap as doing it on something like Coinbase or Binance, DeFi, for example, won't take off. And I think similarly here, the user experience needs to be equivalent for AI to really take place. And yeah, on the privacy side, I agree with you. Most people don't think about it, but I think that's a consumer trend that is probably starting to take a tipping point, maybe even recently, as people start to realize the amount of power that these companies have. And at the end of the day, it's still just humans behind these large companies, right? Like a human can just go in and take a look at personal information. I think there was a case where like TikTok employees were looking at personal information for like journalists, right? And who's to say they just can't do that for anyone, or analyzing for nefarious purposes, or even just data leaks, right? Like all of this, people are just becoming more conscious, similar to how we went through a period of time where we were not very health conscious, from maybe like 1970s to today. Fast food and sugary foods, were just being fed to us. But I think now there's a little bit of a trend towards people being more self-aware that they should be eating healthy. So maybe similarly, privacy might also take that consumer trend, but definitely until the user experience feels the same, I really don't think users will change, right? Like they would probably rather use the LLM model that is fast and cheap rather than the one that's slow and expensive. So until we reach at least some level of parity where it's indistinguishable, or you just pay a little bit more to have the same experience, I think it'll be hard. To your point. Um, yeah, with that as a transition, curious to move into some of these applications or end user, consumer facing applications of AI and crypto. LLM, I think, has potentially a ton of different use cases. So I'll leave it broad here, and I know Shradha and Keshav, you're working on something along these lines. So yeah, kind of curious to see what you see the first kind of like baby steps towards adoption of AI and crypto. So maybe not, the full leap to decentralized compute, but how can we use AI today to help inform or better use crypto?
Yeah, maybe I can take that up and speak about how AI could be leveraged in decentralized state trading. So, based on our experience, we have seen that AI can process vast amounts of data from various sources. So, we use blockchain explorers, graphs, analyze the market trends, new sentiment, social media to figure out patterns and correlations. So, these are difficult for humans to come up with. Now, AI models can assess risk more rapidly and accurately than humans. They can set stop loss orders, manage portfolio diversification, and adjust strategies in real time to minimize losses. Um, so AI can reduce emotional trading and improve execution to a great extent. But we also see limitations when it comes to AI and decentralized trading. So crypto market, like we know, crypto markets are quite volatile, and there could be unexpected events that can cause rapid price fluctuations. So the models can struggle to adapt to these situations. Now, as Keshav also mentioned earlier, that AI predictions are good only if the data that they are trained on is uh, good. So if the data is inaccurate or biased, the predictions could be unreliable. Um, we are just seeing AI as a tool to assist traders rather than replacing humans or traders. So human judgment, experience, and qualitative analysis are still relevant and crucial in crypto trading. So So yeah, these are my thoughts when it comes to how AI can be leveraged when it comes to decentralized trading.
Yeah, that's a really good point on how it can augment human decision making as opposed to completely replacing it. I guess along those lines, do we ever do we ever see a point where automation, right, like this decision making by AI, will start to be put into the smart contracts, right? So the way that I think about a smart contract is just kind of like letting the software make the decisions for me, right? Just based on inputs, and I'm agreeing that it'll happen no matter what. So I'm, but then if we are using humans to inform, these decision making, you still have a human input, to voting, for example, on a DAO or setting parameters on a DeFi protocol. So yeah, kind of curious to hear how people think about, potentially linking AI to smart contracts so that, this decision making made by machines is now also impacting these on-chain software. So yeah, kind of curious to see how that intersection might potentially come about. And I think I can go into some examples that I've seen, but yeah, kind of curious to hear.
Yeah, so in my opinion, at least for the decision making, some bit of information as how to a user wants to have the trade executed, or kind of, an overall analysis of his portfolio, or how much of a risk he wants to take, or how much risk minimization he wants, is something that needs to be provided by a human still. Once that parameters are set into the system, then the way it will help is they would not have to monitor it continuously, right? Whether their risk is being uh, of the portfolio is higher than the usual standard, or they are in greater losses. So in those places, we do believe that AI can come to a great extent and help in the decision making, take those decisions instead of a user having to monitor it at the back end, and also make some decisions based on real time judgment. Like there could be certain, high volatility in a particular token based on something that has happened in the market. Now if a user wants to react to that, it may take him a longer time, rather than maybe if he just informs the models earlier that, say, if they see a huge spike in volatility, then execute transactions in such a manner that my risk is overall reduced. So that is where we believe that user preferences can be fed very well to the AI, so that they will monitor the execution of transactions rather than a human needing to do it. Ultimately, how a human would want to have that executed is something that they'll need to still inform the AI models.
Yeah, definitely. Once you start removing the human, you probably open up the opportunity to make errors. But then, maybe like over time, the AI or the machines themselves could be even more accurate. A good analogy might be self-driving, right? Where, it's taken a really long time to get to the point where we can literally take the hand off the wheel. And, especially for trading, that might be, relatively far away too. Like you probably still want some human input before these decisions are made. But you make a very good point that the AI can be a lot faster. For example, when there's signals for price or order flow, to make decisions, real time as opposed to having a human give input. Yeah, these are super interesting. Yeah, any other thoughts, Brett or Shradha?
No, I think I agree with what Keshav mentioned.
Cool. Yeah, I think another application of this, at least that I've seen, is in DAOs. So um, analyzing data either through machine learning algorithms for risk, for example, or even potentially LLMs in the future to help analyze a large subset of available information. This can help inform some of these DAOs. So a good example is Maker, where they have this vision of using AI in order to inform their risk management for their platform and other parameter setting that the DAO sets. And I think a really good point was made here that humans should still be part of this decision. So I imagine something like this AI informing the decision, giving the information, but then the humans ultimately having the power to sign these decisions into the smart contract. So yeah, kind of curious to hear how or other examples that others have seen, or how AI can be used not only for trading but also broader DAO use cases here in crypto?
Hey guys, sorry, my internet just went down and I'm on cellular now, so I apologize if that was directed to me. I missed the question.
No, you're good. I was just mentioning that potentially a good use case of crypto might be to inform DAO decisions. So, for example, if you have machine learning algorithms that are looking at or analyzing risk in a credit protocol, that can inform the token holders to vote, to maybe lower the risk profile of a specific asset that's being used as collateral. So yeah, kind of curious to hear people's thoughts on how AI can start informing decisions in these DAOs, and then maybe eventually, kind of like self-driving cars will take the hand off the wheel and just let these AI protocols make decisions for us.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that comes to mind is actually what Keshav and Shradhaa were mentioning earlier is kind of the integrity of a language model, right? So one thing, and apologies to pivot from trading, but the if there's a DAO, or you can consider DAOs around even a language model. So considering, like, let's say one language model, there are people that have vested interest in that language model, and they do or do not want the language model trained on specific points. So if you do go into if you did say trading, for instance, and people were looking at different models of how they wanted this AI to trade for them, the DAO could essentially you vote to set that language model, to put things in, to take things out. So I think it's really interesting to see the capabilities of almost like crowdsourcing information from a DAO. What's going in, what's coming out, and how the LLM should respond.
Yeah, it's a very interesting application of it. It might help with some of the inherent bias that exists in the more centralized solutions. Yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah, any other thoughts on how AI can help inform DAO decision making? Cool. Yeah, if not, we have about 5 minutes, so to wrap it up, I like to ask a fun question to our guests. And, feel free to keep your personal opinions if you want, but um, so and actually this has kind of become a little bit more serious recently, but I like to ask folks what are their views on aliens, and whether they're here or not. So yeah, kind of curious even now that we're having like congressional hearings on them. But yeah, are aliens here, and potentially is their AI better than ours?
I can jump in. And apologies, you missed a lot of laughter while I was on mute. I think so. I think so. I think aliens are here. Yeah, I don't know in what form, or if they're just above us or actually on Earth. But I do believe they're here. We're seeing lots of things coming out. I think it's so funny, the timing of which that alien this whole conversation is coming up, and kind of the lack of interest of the uh, typical person right now. I know if you have told me 10 years ago, even I would have been a lot more like, what is going on, than I would right now. I think AI is driving a lot of crazy narrative in press as well. And I would assume if they can fly here from a separate galaxy, and they do have artificial intelligence, that it is better than ours at this point. It's better than ChatGPT.
Yeah, maybe they can help us improve our models. That might be a great use case for aliens. Um, yeah, any thoughts on that, Kishav, Shradha?
Yeah, I think I believe that aliens and UFOs do exist because I think we have been seeing a lot of scientific research as well, and based on the reports that have been published. Um, but I am not too sure about whether their AI is better than us. but definitely I can speak about their existence.
That's a very, very hot take. They can fly here, but their RA might be better. That might be our only chance against them if they're hostile. Cool. So yeah, I know. Last 3 minutes. Any parting thoughts from y'all, and we can wrap it up with this. Maybe share. Yeah, maybe you can share a little bit more about how people can learn more about your companies, and yeah, just a brief blurb about it.
Yeah, I think we really love this Twitter space. Thank you so much for having us here. Please follow us on Twitter and also be part of our other channels, Twitter, Discord. There are a lot of informational content that we keep posting every day. So you can learn more about SwapGPT, what we are coming up with next. So there are a bunch of interesting features that we're going to launch. Our platform is also going to go live on testnet soon. So please follow us on Twitter and be part of our other social channels as well.
Awesome. Yeah, that's SwapGPT. You can see them here in the Twitter space, so definitely follow them and check them out online. Yeah, Brett, any parting thoughts? And how can people best find and learn more about Alethea?
Yeah. So we launched CharacterGPT. You can actually test that out at mycharacter.ai, which is a place you can go create any character just from a simple text and natural language. And then also, our flagship dApp is noahsark.ai, and it's a place where you can imbue artificial intelligence into any NFT that you own and create its personality, create that character, and iterate with it and train it to be whatever you would like, and have some fun with it and create content.
Awesome, cool. Yeah, we'll definitely be checking that out. For those that follow our accounts, we definitely use these AI avatars to put out content. So yeah, excited to try that. And yeah, thank you again for all the guests for joining. This is a very insightful conversation and one of my favorites so far. So yeah, thank you all, and thank you all for listening. We'll see you again next time.
Thanks so much for having us. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.